But there's also what people say and how they say it. Check this out. Here's the Democrat leaders talking about Republican policies that will kill people. Go ahead.
Senator Sanders, earlier this afternoon, you tweeted, quote, Donald Trump and Republicans just celebrated voting to let thousands of Americans die so that billionaires get tax breaks.
Now stop right there. Look at that. They just celebrated voting to let thousands of Americans die so that billionaires can get tax breaks. That is so incredibly unconscionable for Sanders to say this. Now, Sanders today went to the floor of the Senate and denounced violence and denounced what took place in Alexandria by one of his volunteer supporters, as you can imagine. But look at this. Sanders is a communist. Sanders is a communist. He says he believes in nonviolence. Do you believe in nonviolence when you say stuff like this? That the Republicans just celebrated voting to let thousands of Americans die so that billionaires could get tax breaks? Go ahead.
Is that really what you think is happening here? Do you think thousands of Americans will die if...
Absolutely. No question. If, which is not going to happen, Anderson, but if the bill passed today in the House became law, thousands of Americans would die because they would no longer have access to health care.
Gutting the ACA is like shoving a stick of dynamite into the treatment gap and then lighting the fuse. And if the Republicans get their way, people will lose health coverage. People will lose access to recovery services. People will die.
Folks in red states and red counties who passionately want to keep their health care, who were promised better health care, more access, something better than the Affordable Care Act. Well, this is clearly not just worse, it's a death knell. And I don't mean to be melodramatic about this, but I've seen this when people have to wait to get their health care till the emergency room. This will cost American lives if it ever becomes law. This will mean death, pain, and suffering to people's families.
And it goes on and on and on. So in other words, Republican policies will kill people, it'll cause suffering and death, and so forth and so on. Just utterly and completely despicable and irresponsible. And yes, it creates this culture and this climate of hate, which leads to violence. In this particular case, you have a kook who's a Bernie Sanders supporter. I can't get into his mind, neither can you. But again, you're lighting matches and you're throwing them on a fire, and nothing good comes of that.